welcome to a new episode of Assassin's Creed Unity. Since last episode, I actually synchronized all the viewpoints and gotten as many collectibles as possible without, upgrading or tools or skills, because everything here, we need to become an assassin first. Um, and the rest, not only that, but we need to be able to lockpick doors and I mean, locks, really. Not just doors, but all sorts of stuff. So that is something that I'll be doing offline. But I just want to show you how the map looks for me, because my priority was, okay, let's just clean up the map. And then I feel more comfortable doing the missions. So we have story missions to focus on first, and once the whole story is done, then I'm gonna be focusing on side stuff, which is this little icon. Sorry, excuse me. These little icons here, for example, they called Paris stories. Excuse my yawning. It's just part of my personality, I guess. All right. So with that out of the way, let's do it. Oh, also, I think I died. Yeah, of course I did. Well, what a way to start the episode. What I meant to say was, among the chests that I unlocked, I actually got a few outfits from previous games. Out of the top of my head, we have Templar's outfit from Shay, from Assassin's Creed Rogue. We have Edward's outfit from Black Flag. We have Connor's outfit from AC3. And we have Ezio's outfit as well. Wait. By skills, weapons, or equipment? I have nothing, buddy. I legit have nothing, so let's just do this. That's such a weird thing. Like, I'm not even an assassin. What do you mean upgrade?
I suppose a simple address would be too mundane.
Oh, and I also meant to do something, also, I just forgot, which is the database. Some of these I completely forgot, let's say, not exactly forgot, but basically every time I was trying to load up the map, sometimes you would load up the database. So let me just make sure I don't miss anything. And you can just skip ahead if you really don't care about, well, the knowledge part of stuff. Alright. Holy shit. Okay. Pont Neuf. This new bridge is now the oldest existing bridge in Paris. The laying of the first stone on May 31st, 1578 was a cheerful occasion for Henri III, who had just lost two of his favorite minions in a duel. The king was coming out of the funeral service and he was raining. Always ready for a laugh, the Parisians subsequently dubbed the bridge Le Pont des Pleurs, or the Bridge of Tears. The Pont Neuf was a unique bridge in its time, the first to be built in stone, the widest, the most accessible, and unlike the other bridges of Paris back then, no houses were built along the bridge's spans. Oh shit, I'm sorry. Pont de la Tournelle. The Pont de la Tournelle replaced a wooden bridge constructed in 1370, whose complicated name Pont du Feu de l'Île Notre-Dame et Saint-Bernard did little to make it popular. Washed away by a flood, it was finally replaced by a stone construction in 1656. La Tournelle, for turret, was a small fortress that served as a comfortable prison reserved for galley slaves. Thanks to caring priest Saint Vincent de Paul, public charity thus supported these galley slaves. However, on September the 3rd, 1792, the prison's 63 convicts were butchered by drunken patriots, worked up to a frenzy by the diatribes of Marat, who had no doubt mistaken the convicts for dangerous counter-revolutionaries. You mean racists? This I read, this I didn't. Pont Notre Dame. Although many times destroyed and replaced in the early 1400s, a few wooden planks served the purpose, some form of bridge existed at the spot in Paris since nearly the founding of the city. The bridge was historically lined with houses, but these proved to put too much of a burden on the bridge's stability. Churches. La Madeleine. Situated alongside the very chic Faubourg Saint-Germain, the Madeleine Church was primarily designed by Guillaume Martin Couture, who drew his inspiration from Jacques Germain Soufflot Église Sainte-Geneviève, the future Panthéon. In 1789, with the taking of the Bastille, the construction work ground to a virtual halt. Only the foundations and the grand portico had been completed. On December 30, 1791, work on the church was ordered to stop. The Revolution was hardly an advocate of religion. After his execution in 1793, Louis XVI was buried behind the church. 1 year later, the basement was leased to a wine merchant who used it to store his merchandise. Only in the 19th century was the edifice finally completed. First note would be a mild way of putting it, yes. Second note, or to put another way, Templars. Oh, I get it. Notre-Dame de Paris. Notre-Dame de Paris is the foremost monument in Paris and the historic heart of the capital. Its parvis is the point from which all milestones on the road to France are measured. Built over the course of nearly a century, from 1163 to 1250, it was one of the first buildings in Europe to employ flying buttresses, which allowed for much higher and thinner walls around the choir and the nave. Personally, the last thing I would want near a choir is a thinner wall. Lock them in, then soundproof the bugger, please. The flying buttresses also provide the support necessary for the inclusion of the church's famous and astonishing rose windows. During the Revolution, the great cathedral was variously used as a food storage and a church dedicated to the cult of reason and later the cult of the supreme being. Many of its greatest treasures were looted, and in 1793, an angry mob decapitated the statues of the biblical kings of Judah that adorned Notre Dame, mistaking them for former kings of France. Holy shit! They weren't angry, they were drunk. This is what happens when the uneducated lose their heads. Get it? Only 10 great bells survived unscathed. The damage inflicted would not be repaired until 1845. So, is this the DLC of the Dead Kings? Is that the link? Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Prior to the Revolution, Saint-Germain-des-Prés was a popular area for nobility to have their country houses, and the town's abbey was one of the richest in France. The site's first church was raised in the year 558. The Revolution effectively turned the abbey from church to storehouse, and 15,000 tons of gunpowder were stockpiled in the refectory. Perhaps inevitably, an explosion destroyed part of the former abbey in August 1794. Not that this prevented it from becoming the Prison de la Baille, where some of the most atrocious massacres would take place in September 1793. Our sense of linear time perhaps inevitably exploded when Abstergo couldn't be bothered to fact-check their database. Tour Saint-Jacques. When the Church of Saint-Jacques-la-Boucherie was torn down, it was decided to preserve one of its flamboyant towers, built under the reign of what's his real name? Francois? The First? I don't know, I'm sorry. Now known as the Tour de Saint-Jacques. There are no ornamental decorations around its base, since it was firmly inside the nave and therefore not visible. The original church was a starting point for the religious pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. The alchemist Nicolas Flamel was originally buried under the floor of the church. The remaining tower is also a monument to science. This is where the mathematician and inventor Blaise Pascal conducted experiments concerning atmospheric pressure in 1648. Église Saint-Eustache. The second biggest church in Paris is situated at the center of Les Halles. Started out as a modest chapel dedicated to Saint Agne, a Roman martyr. Later, relics of Saint Eustache were brought to the church, and that saint, whose symbol is a large stag deer overseen by a cross, became the church's namesake. With the development of the central market of Les Halles, the parish church became too small. The current church took 105 years to construct, from 1532 to 1637. Its Gothic structure and Renaissance detail, to say nothing of its dimensions, make it a surprising edifice. Moreover, it curves to the north since it was built along the line formed by the Rue Traînée-Rambuteau. Since no one wanted to expropriate the shopkeepers who were installed there, it is missing its southernmost tower. Église Saint-Gervais Saint-Protais, Place d'Orme. Named after the twin martyrs Gervasius and Protavius, for 300 years, this beautiful church looked out over a huge ancient elm, Orme. They gave shade to creditors resolving their affairs in the Middle Ages. On the site of an ancient basilica, the current church was first built in 1494, with the Greco-Roman facade added in 1616. Voltaire, no religious enthusiast, proclaimed the church to be a masterpiece. Chopped down under the Revolution, which preferred the trees of liberty, the elm was recycled into gun carriages. The church itself is now an animated place of worship with a very active congregation of nuns. Église Les Célestins. This church was built in 1352, funded by Pope Celestine V from his own funds. The chapel once held the hearts of Henry II, Francis II, and Henri III, but by 1792, the church was no more, and its gardens had become a barracks. The hearts of the kings were safely transferred to the Louvre, to Saint-Denis, and to the Museum of Versailles. And there was you thinking the royals were heartless. Filles du Calvaire Convent. The convent, of which nothing now remains, was situated in the heart of the lively district on Rue de Turenne. It was founded by Père Joseph in 1622. The revolutionaries expelled the last remaining sisters and transformed the chapel into a theater dubbed Le Boudoir des Muses. It was situated next to the famous Boulevard du Crime, named after the many melodramas that played in its theaters. The theater ran until 1807 before it was closed by the Empire. Sainte-Chapelle. The Sainte-Chapelle, or Holy Chapel, was built by Louis IX, later canonized as Saint Louis, to house Christ's crown of thorns, which he had just purchased from Baldwin II of Constantinople. Louis purchased the crown of thorns, that means. Christ didn't travel into the future to buy a crown of thorns for Baldwin II of Constantinople. He had ready access to thorns in biblical times. He didn't need to go all the way to Constantinople to find some bloke called Baldwin II. Also, Baldwin II, so Baldwin I suffered through life with that god-awful name, then decided to give it to his son as well. Some people. The edifice is a unique example of seemingly invisible stonework, since its windows take up all the space between the structural supports. Perhaps more extraordinary is that it was built in just 2 years, between 1246 and 1248. Believe me, I'm not very familiar with European builders. Nothing else in their history has ever been built in just 2 years, not even a small wall or miniature water feature. It is set on 2 levels. The lower level was for Parisians and the people of the court. The upper level was for the king and his family. On important occasions, the king presented the crown, taken from the reliquary, to which he alone had the key to the kneeling congregation. It came close to being demolished during the Revolution, but it would eventually be used as a flower store, a club room for the Section de la Cité, and finally a store for archiving old papers, which effectively saved it since it served the people. It bore a sign proclaiming national property for sale until 1837. All the sacred vessels and precious books had long since disappeared. Districts. Cour des Miracles. The Cour des Miracles was one of the poorest, most dangerous slums in revolutionary Paris. It took its name from the many beggars who faked terrible injuries and diseases to elicit donations, only to be miraculously cured when it was time to go home. You'd think the name would have been a good tip off people. Saint-Marcel. Along with the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, the Faubourg Saint-Marcel, located on the left bank in the south of Paris, was the city's other foremost working-class neighborhood. The River Bièvre runs through it. The district was renowned for its tanneries, for the manufacture of blankets, as well for hosiery, dyeing, and laundry. Sounds like a crazy place where anything could happen. The imposing Manufacture des Gobelins, where the finest tapestries in France were produced, was located here. The district was made famous by Jean-Jacques Rousseau's description. I had imagined a city of a most imposing appearance, as beautiful as it was large, where one could see only splendid streets and palaces of marble or gold. As I entered de Faubourg Saint-Marceau, I saw nothing but dirty, stinking little streets, wretched black houses, a general air of squalor and poverty, beggars, carters, menders of clothes, sellers of herb drinks, and old hats. All this so affected me at the outset that all the real magnificence I have since seen in Paris has not been sufficient to efface my first impression, and I have always retained this secret aversion against living in the capital. Rousseau later became the patron saint of website travel reviewers. Le Marais. Located in the heart of Paris, the Marais district's finest hours would come during the 17th century when the many aristocrats who lived there transformed it into a fashionable district. In the 18th century, the nobility gradually abandoned the district in favor of the Faubourg Saint-Honoré or the Faubourg Saint-Germain. In spite of this departure, the Marais would always retain its image as an aristocratic district, which meant that with the coming of the Revolution, writers would set about destroying the many symbols of royalty and nobility that were found there. It was a wonderfully convenient sort of one-stop shop for those of the right's persuasion. With the Revolution, the district changed progressively. The abandoned townhouses were taken up by merchants to form warehouses or workshops. The beautiful homes were thus preserved, and so the Marais became inhabited by more modest people who kept shops or practiced craft trades, which in turn gave way to small factories and semi-industrialized trades of the 19th century. Okay, this I know I read. Boulevard des Théâtres. Thanks to Jean-Baptiste Nicolet and his royally approved theater dubbed Spectacle des Grands Danseurs et Sauteurs du Roi, the Boulevard du Temple in the north of Paris developed into what could be called a continuous fair. The theater brought in all types of entertainment along with cafes. Oh my goodness, I can't do this. Along with cafe. How do you say this? Along with coffee shops, caterers, and wine merchants. In addition to shows inside the venue, actors were hired to play out small scenarios called parade on a balcony in front of the theater in order to attract spectators. The construction of several theaters, towards the end of the 18th century, no less than 16 new theaters built between 1774 and 1789 prompted the establishment of the entertainment networks that became ongoing fairs. The Revolution merely expedited this desire to free the theater from the oppression of an ancien regime that prevented the public from expressing itself. At the National Convention, Robespierre commended the educational side of theatrical arts, and on January 13, 1791, the National Assembly abolished royal privileges, unshackled the theater, and acknowledged as human rights authors' royalties, which had been written off on August 4, 1789, along with other privileges. Café Théâtre. Oh, now I can say it. What the hell? Opened on Ile Saint-Louis in 1759, the Café Théâtre was one of Paris' premier coffee houses for decades. Intellectuals, poets, philosophers, and actors flocked to its tables, and the salon was a center for political debate and discussion. Over the years, though, cafes like the Café Procope gradually supplanted it in prominence. By 1790, Café Théâtre was a shabby, rundown place, more likely to host a second-rate body comedy show than an impassioned debate. It experienced a resurgence during the Revolution and even opened several satellite locations around Paris and remained a fixture of the city's intelligentsia through World War I. It was also a central clearinghouse for the Parisian Brotherhood's intelligence gathering network, a concept that is so adorably French I don't even have the words for it. Cimetière des Saints Innocents. Originally, the street leading to Saint-Denis, outside the ramparts of the Roman capital, which mainly occupied the left bank, served as a city cemetery. Just to say, you're about to read my favorite historical nickname of all time. Louis VI the Fat, who had already overseen the construction of Les Halles, had Saint-Innocent built in 1130. Its cemetery would become the cemetery of all the churches of Paris, which made for an unprecedented concentration of dead bodies. A plague epidemic could bring about thousands of deaths in the space of just a few weeks. In the 1400s, improvements were made, partly paid for and designed by Nicolas Flamel. The whole was overseen by a macabre mural of the Dance of Death. Just prior to the Revolution, the bodies were disinterred and moved to the catacombs beneath Paris. Holy shit. Conciergerie. This palace was the seat of the kings of France from the 10th century to the middle of the 14th, when Charles V abandoned it for the Louvre. By the early 15th century, it was primarily used as a prison, though the name conciergerie, from concierge, keeper of the royal palace, stuck. By the time of the Revolution, the conciergerie was the main prison in Paris. For many, it was the last stop before execution, which earned it the nickname antechamber of the guillotine. The conciergerie was also called the most lucrative furnished lodging in Paris. Prisoners were allowed to rent a bed for 27 livres a month, but since many were executed after only a few days, jailers could rent out the same bed sometimes 10 times a month. Holy shit, that's disgusting. Ferme Générale Wall. The Ferme Générale, General Farm, was a much-hated private tax-collecting organization that built a wall encircling Paris as a means to collect tolls on goods entering the city. As opposed to those much-loved private tax-collecting organizations, those guys are a bloody riot. The wall was marked by 62 barrier gates built in classical style, many of which still stand today. Suppression of the Ferme Générale was one of the most popular acts of the National Assembly. Grand Châtelet. Marked by an imposing walled square tower, this prison was once a fortress, located in the heart of the city at the Place de Grève. It enjoyed a particularly sinister reputation. This was yet another construction by the indefatigable Louis VI the Fat, who wanted to defend the Grand Pont Bridge, since replaced by the Pont au Change. Set in the middle of what was then a particularly squalid district, it served as headquarters of the Prévôt de Paris, or Provost Marshal, who essentially ruled over the city, along with his lieutenants and his 48 advisors. Justice was dealt out swiftly within its walls. Whereas the Bastille was demolished in just a few frenzied weeks, the Grand Châtelet was put to fresh use by the Reign of Terror, housing prisoners that would fall victim during the September massacres. Finally, the prison itself fell to Napoleon, who wanted it razed. That's the small man complex for you, constantly wanting to bring things down to their level. Okay, but the thing is, I watched a documentary many years ago, and for nowadays standards, Napoleon would be short. But back in the day, Napoleon was considered average height. So that is just really interesting. Like, he's judged on today's standards. And so, he was a short man. Like, he didn't feel short. He was just average. He had no reasons to feel short. Anyways. Among his illustrious occupants were François Villon, Clément Marot, poisoner Antoine François Desrues, and the Marquis de Favras in 1790 before it hanged. It engendered the word morgue in French, which in the 15th century meant face in its verbal form to stare at. Oh, morgue. The Châtelet jailers stared at their victims, no doubt with contempt, so that they would be able to identify them in case they escaped. The word morgue came to be used to designate the cells. It also sounds an awful lot like my days in the British public school system, just with less random violence. See, morgue, spelled exactly like this in Portuguese, means mortuary. Isn't that interesting? Aïe au blé. At the end of the 12th century, King Philippe Auguste established different markets and fairs in a place called Les Champeaux, which later evolved into the Les Aïeux quarter. However, as the markets grew, the streets around became increasingly congested. Shipping grain through the traffic became complicated and slow. In the 18th century, the city of Paris decided to simplify the grain transport and stocking by building a more easily accessible aïeux au blé. The land was purchased in 1755, and the ring-shaped structure was built there. Initially roofless, in 1782 a wooden cupola was added to protect the grain from rain and other weather events. It is unbelievable it took that long. Hey, let's store all our grain in this big, wide open thing. But should we add a roof to protect our precious stock from the elements, contamination, wildlife, and theft? I think we'll be fine, little Jimmy nerd face. Run along now. After several fires, the building received an iron cupola at the end of the 19th century. It no longer contains grain, but is kept in use as Paris' goods exchange. Hospice des Enfants Trouvés. The meticulous chronicler Sébastien Mercier left evidence of the tens of thousands of children abandoned in Paris. Mercier spoke of those exposed children who were often left on the steps of churches. The most famous among them was the philosopher D'Alembert, or in the towers of convents. The Hôpital de la Charité, or Charity Hospital, was supposed to accommodate them with the income from certain fines, but new facilities were needed. With the financial support of Chancellor Dalicre, a city square and a market bear his name, Queen Maria Theresa founded this hospice in 1670, situated on what is now the Square Trousseau. A subsidiary establishment would be built on the forecourt I have no idea how to pronounce that. Of Notre Dame. Hôtel de Ville. In 1246, Louis IX invented the position of provost of the merchants, who centered his power in the Maison aux Piliers on the spot, eventually renamed the Hôtel de Ville. The building came to have a row of busts along the front, celebrating the historical mayors of Paris, who looked out over the Place de Grève and its public executions. The interior was consumed in flames during the insurrection of 1871. The building was completely restored afterwards. It remains the center of Paris municipal government to this day. That's pretty dope. La Bièvre. While the Bièvre is a small river like hundreds of others in France, the fact that it flows into the Seine in the very heart of the city meant that its economic importance surpassed that of its flow, an honorable 42 cubic meters per second nonetheless. I think that's historian code for it was a vast and thorough river of shit. The river runs for a length of 32 kilometers and at its widest point measures 4 meters. Today it is virtually out of sight, concealed by the urban landscape. The origin of its name is still subject to debate. Beaver in Celtic? I don't know how you pronounce that. Wait, is it Celtic, the pronunciation of that? This is doubtful, since the river's weak current is hardly conducive to the survival of these busy semi-aquatic rodents, and yet this creature figures on the coat of arms of the small town of Bièvre, near to its source. However, Beber also refers to the color of mud, which is that color of the river's water due to the clay-rich soil it churns up, well before the tanneries that pollute it further downstream. Another line of reasoning suggests that the name originates from the Latin verb bibere, to drink, as a result of the many bistros along its banks. A bar-side joke, perhaps? Is it me or are they overthinking this? See, beber, as it's written there, in the second line, it's exactly how you spell and pronounce drink, or to drink, or drinking in Portuguese. The more you know. Le Champ de Mars. The name of this green space, literally field of Mars, is a tribute to the Greek god of war, Kratos! Oh, never mind, I'm sorry. Since its lawns were used by the French military as an exercise ground. I mean, to be fair, he's not Greek, he's Spartan. So, since its lawns were used by the French military as an exercise ground, surrounded by ditches and trees, it was nevertheless left open to the civilian population, and even served as an occasional playground for Parisian balloonists. It was thus a favorite leisure spot in Paris and would be the scene of the revolution's key moments starting from 1790. On July 14, 1790, despite heavy rain, a crowd of some 300,000 attended the Fête de la Fédération in honor of the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. Sounds lovely, we must visit. In November 1793, former mayor of Paris, Jean-Sylvain Bailly, was tortured for 2 hours by a frenzied mob in one of the field's ditches before being beheaded by a purpose-built guillotine. His execution was intended as an expiatory ceremony. Actually, I'll leave it. On June 8, 1794, the Champ de Mars also hosted the Feast of the Supreme Being, devised and celebrated by Robespierre, subsequently frowned upon as a parody by his Jacobin colleagues, and which would hasten his downfall. Leveled and extended, it would offer Gustave Eiffel the perfect spot for his giant steel structure 140 years later. Thereafter, the Champ de Mars served as a setting for princely weddings, national workshops, and horse racing, followed by concerts and imposing fireworks displays in the 20th century. Holy shit, like there's a lot of history where the Eiffel Tower is, and I had no idea. Les Halles, yet another city within the city. Les Halles was appropriately known as the belly of Paris, since this is where Parisians bought their groceries each morning. There's a fat French bloke downstairs we call the Belly of Paris, too. Before becoming a market, it was an expanse of little fields, confirmed by the names of two streets, Rue des Petits Champs and Rue de la Croix des Petits Champs. The market operated up until 1866, when architect Victor Baltard completed his massive glass and iron market pavilions? I don't know. After 12 years' work, it was a model that all of Europe would imitate. Not until the 1970s was it finally pulled down and replaced by the present-day concrete jungle, over which a huge glass canopy was recently installed. Les Invalides. Both Henri IV and Cardinal Richelieu had previously attempted, in vain, set up a hospital for invalid soldiers. Louis XIV, the Sun King, solved the problem by taxing Francis abbeys and laid the first stone on November 30, 1671. 5 years later, he was occupied by some 6,000 soldiers. In 1789, the Parisian mob stormed the hospital, seizing the cannon and muskets stored in its cellars for use in the storming of the Bastille. Some 50 years later, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte would be entombed beneath the building's great gilded dome. Although today, Les Invalides is primarily a museum, it still serves as a retirement home and medical center for roughly 100 elderly or injured veterans. New veterans, of course, not 100 blokes from 1780s who somehow lived this long. That'll make it a hell of an effective hospital. Not necessary. Medici's Tower. This tower is the last vestige of a royal palace built under Catherine de Medicis, great-granddaughter of Lorenzo the Magnificent. Catherine was interested in predictions of the future. She was a patron of Nostradamus, and allowed the astronomer Ruggieri to use this tower to observe the heavens from the iron enclosure at the top. Newspaper stand and printing presses. One of the most spectacular aspects of commerce during the Revolutionary period was the boom in printing, driven by the explosion in the number of publications. Before 1789, censorship tightly controlled the production of literary works, including periodicals. With the Revolution, however, the printing industry blossomed. In June 1789, only 5 newspapers were on sale. By December of the same year, the figure had risen to 130. Among the most important papers of the Revolution were Camille Desmoulins, Le Vieux Cordelier. Oh shit, I'm sorry. Hey! Sorry about that. Jacques Brissot, girondiste, le patriote français. Jacques-René Hébert, le père Duchesne, and Jean-Paul Marat, l'ami du peuple. Oh fuck, I don't know how to pronounce that. These papers reach a huge number of Parisians, even those who weren't familiar with reading, since it was not uncommon to find individuals who read articles aloud in the middle of the street to persuade others. Panthéon. In 1744, King Louis XV vowed that if he recovered from smallpox, he would replace the ruined church of the Abbey of Sainte Geneviève with a new one. He recovered, and constructions on the Panthéon began in 1755, and it was completed in 1780. The building stands 60 meters above the Seine and is the high point of Paris' left bank. Although the building began as a church, it has changed hands several times over the years, from church to state. In April 1791, the remains of Mirabeau were placed here, turning the building into a sort of secular mausoleum. Later, when his secret correspondence with the king was revealed, Mirabeau's remains were removed. I bet he was livid. In fact, if he had still had a grave, he'd probably have been spinning in it. Today, the building houses the bodies of some of France's greatest heroes, including Voltaire, Marie Curie, Victor Hugo. Place des Vosges. Des Vosges? Shit, I don't know. This square was originally named the Place Royale by Henri IV, who oversaw the design of its 36th pavilion. The king had requested perfect symmetry, 4 arcades and 2 rows of high windows for each pavilion. The square obliterated the field where, some decades before, Henri II had suffered a mortal wound in a jousting tournament. What is jousting? And died in a building nearby. With the advent of the Revolution, it was no longer acceptable to carry a name honoring royalty, and the square underwent several name changes before. In 1792, settling upon a name to honor the regiment of volunteers from the Vosges, who came to save the Republic. Since the story doesn't want to be specific about what the Republic was saved from, I'm going to let you pick your preference from the following list: Austrians, Martians, zombie, hordes. The Sorbonne is so famous that its founder, the Honorable Robert de Sorbonne, chaplain of Louis IX, and the first advocate of culture for all, is often overlooked. Isn't that disgraceful? It would be like someone walking around Hastings and not spending every waking moment thinking of me. Having struggled to become a doctor of theology, he thought to facilitate the education of underprivileged children like himself. Saint Louis offered him a house on Rue Campigneul, along with a few of his own outbuildings, where Sorbonne subsequently built a school. 3 centuries later, Richelieu observed that the Sorbonne was falling into ruin and set about renovating it. In 1629, he undertook to rebuild the entire establishment, provided a place was left for his tomb. This was duly done. The subsequent masterpiece built by Girardon was carefully protected during the Revolution. Then, in 1816, re-established in the chapel of the Sorbonne once the return of Louis XVIII had been made official. Towards the end of the 19th century, the old Sorbonne of the Cardinal was rebuilt and extended. The Sorbonne has often been the subject of derision since Renaissance scholar Rabelais made reference to bugs called Sorbonnagres that devoured the intelligence of thinkers. Temple. After returning from their crusades to Jerusalem, the Knights Templar built a stronghold in 1240 to serve the headquarters of the order in Europe and center of its charitable works. After King Philippe IV betrayed the order and executed Jacques de Molay, the temple was used for a time by Knights of Malta before being converted into a prison. Most of the French royal family were held within its walls, most notably Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, and the Dauphin, Louis Charles. Now, that would have made for a great reality TV show. Just add a public vote and some kind of eviction party in front of a jeering crowd. They could even yell "cut" as the guillotine fell. By the early 1800s, the prison had become a place of pilgrimage for royalists, and Napoleon ordered it demolished to remove its use as a symbol of the old monarchy. Today it survives only as a stop on the Paris Metro and the covered market in the 3rd arrondissement. Its name is a silent memorial to a betrayer king and a king betrayed. École militaire. Once the domain of partridges, rabbits, and small game, it was in this former war in Grenelle that Louis XV sought to build a military academy comparable with that founded by his great-grandfather, Louis XIV. The idea was to house and educate 500 boys from poor, preferably war-stricken families, and to make elite officers of them. It was an undertaking primarily overseen and sponsored by the Marquise de Pompadour. As he wrote to her, "I have approved the project since you absolutely wanted, my beloved." 8 years later, the first classes were held. One of the establishment's most famous pupils was the young Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte. I don't know how to pronounce him in French. Élève du roi, pupil of the king. Age only 15, he graduated as a second lieutenant after a mere 12 months study. Man. Hôtel des Menus Plaisir. Built at the command of Louis XV, house organization. Oh, we read this. Les Catacombes. The left bank of Paris is built on rich limestone deposits, the stone from which built much of the city. Initially, the stone was mined well out from the city proper, but as Paris expanded, it gradually covered even the mined-out areas. Since medieval mining involved digging a well down to the stone deposits and then tunneling horizontally until the vein was depleted, the result was a vast, intricate maze of tunnels beneath the streets. A series of building collapses beginning in 1774 proved that the tunnels could no longer be ignored, and in 1782, Police Lieutenant Thiroux de Crosne decided to act. By which they mean he decided to do something about the situation, not that he decided to put on a small play. Get it? Thiroux had the quarries within an area of 240 hectares. Hectares? How do you read that? Surveyed and registered. He saw the old mine shafts as an opportunity to solve another pressing problem. What to do with the bones of hundreds of thousands of dead people from the Innocent Cemetery, which were so densely packed that they literally spilled out into the basements of adjoining buildings. Sleep well tonight. Sleep well every night. Observatoire de Paris. The observatory was an undertaking promoted by Louis XIV, who favored poets as well as scholars. Claude Perrault drew up the plans, which excluded iron so as not to disturb the compass needles and wood to prevent any fire. The first stone was symbolically laid on the day of the summer solstice in 1667. 5 years later, Jean-Dominique Cassini climbed the 145 steps of the octagonal southeast tower. Not that everyone's counting. The observatory's cellars lie 27 meters underground to maintain a constant temperature, essential for the smooth functioning of the optical and measuring instruments. Those employed there had to climb down 330 steps to start their work. It can't be no small coincidence that the first powered elevators came into being towards the start of the 19th century. Everyone was bloody knackered by then. Beyond the cellars lie the catacombs. Repeatedly handed down from father to son, the position of director of the observatory would remain within the Cassini family until 1791. They would be succeeded by the Lalande, Le Verrier, and Arago, among others. Place Dauphine. In 1601, Henri IV announced that a public square, triangular in fact, would be created and given to the first president of the parliament, Achille de Harlay, who had remained loyal to Henri during the wars of religion. Harlay divided the square, situated away from the traffic on the bridge, into 12 lots in 1608. The houses built were rented by artisans, tailors, printers, booksellers, and officers of the nearby Palais de Justice. Up until 1633, one of the main attractions of the square, then a clutter of the little houses, was a trestle stage used by the famous Parisian farceur Tabarin, Antoine Girard, who put on short Italian-style performances with his brother and their little theater troupe. His motto was, "The world is merely deceived by charlatans." Ain't that the truth? Acting the tabarin, faire le tabarin in French, became a proverb that literally no one has ever used. How do you know? We read this. Hôtel Fiubé. A spectacular accumulation of styles, the overall inconsistency of which gives the edifice its charm. This site was chosen by Charles V for his Hôtel Saint-Paul, away from the bustle of the Louvre. In 1676, parliamentary advisor Gaspard Fiubé commissioned Jules Hardouin Mansart, him again, to draw plans from his new abode. Fiubé was a charming and popular poet, friend of Jean de La Fontaine and Madame de Sévigné. He was also Councillor of the State and Chancellor to Queen Maria Theresa, wife of Louis XIV. Hardly surprisingly, financial means were no obstacle. Hôtel de Seine. Located on the bank of the River Seine, the Hôtel de Seine, along with the Hôtel de Cluny, is the last vestige of medieval architecture in Paris, 1475. The hotel was built for the Archbishop of Seine, a character who overshadowed even the Archbishop of Paris. It currently houses the Fourny Art Library, thus conferring an altogether literary sheen on what is otherwise a military work of architecture. A cannonball remains lodged in the walls near to the left turret as a somber reminder of the riots of 1830. On a lighter note, the insatiable Queen Margot saw her young lover's throat slit by a jealous suitor in front of its beautiful Gothic gate. A wonderful magical image, I'm sure, will come back to you this and every Valentine's Day. You say a lighter note, huh? My goodness. Hôtel de Sully. In 1634, the Duc de Sully, a fairly dashing 74-year-old, expanded his townhouse to include a building at the bottom of the small garden, which still today juxtaposes the Place des Vosges, then the Place Royale. By now attached to Nile, he was known to prance about under the square's arcades wearing outdated jewelry. Meanwhile, his wife was 50 years his junior, went from one lover to the next, as she should. It was from the terrace of this hotel that Madame de Sévigné and her friends watched the poisoner and alleged sorceress Catherine de Chaille, I like her already, known as La Voisin, being carted away to be burned at the stake at the Place de la Grève on November 10th, 1680. Man, I fucking hate this. It was also while coming out of the same hotel that the young Voltaire, already the darling of Parisian society, was set upon by the servants of nobleman Chevalier de Rouen, who later had him imprisoned at the Bastille. They had quarreled over an actress. Voltaire was later cleared and received an annuity of 1,200 livres. And palaces. Louvre. The Louvre could be referred to in the plural, since there have in fact been several Louvre palaces since Philippe Auguste inaugurated it as a fortress. Its new regime sought to leave its own particular mark on the edifice, starting with Charles V the Wise. The Wise. I think that's the nickname I'd go for. Better than that guy called the Fat, or the other one who wanted to be known as the Severe. Two of the worst nicknames in history. France's monarchs never ceased to embellish and improve the Leovar, I don't know what that is, which in Old Saxon means fortified camp, and which would become Louvre. Oh, so it's the origin of the word, got it. And so this barbarian gourbi, or shack, became the largest palace in the world, expanded and improved by Francis the First, who had several sobriquets, including Francis of the Large Nose, as well as by Henri II and later Louis XIV. Man, this is hard to read. Okay, of the Large Nose, we have a new worse nickname. Hi, they call me King of the Large Nose. Well, be still, my beating heart. Despite its impressive stature, the palace was snubbed by France's kings, who, starting with Louis XIII, preferred Versailles. The courtyard, known as the Pavillon de Sully, is overseen by a large clock. Louis XVI was the last monarch to use the palace as a household. Palais Bourbon. The palace lay outside the former ramparts, but close to what was then the Place Louis XV, now Place de la Concorde. At the time, it was a self-contained little city that provided a safe haven from the sprawling city. It was built on the whim of the illegitimate daughter, later legitimized, of Louis XIV and the Marquise de Montespan. Louis XV purchased the plot to brighten up the south side of the square that would bear his name until 1790. The Revolutionary era was nationalized, and the Council of the 500 gathered there to deliberate and legislate. Palais de Tuileries. Originally a separate palace, the Tuileries was united with the Louvre Palace by Henri IV. The original Tuileries was a result of a caprice of Catherine de Medici, who found the Louvre too big, too cold, and too crowded. She turned her attentions to a former tile factory on the other side of the ditch, which she would transform into the palace of her dreams. Since the land was vacant, there was no one to expropriate. Posh person's word, meaning forcibly turf out. Over the centuries, the Tuileries garden would become much like an amusement park, the highlight of which came when Jacques-Alexandre César Charles launched the world's first hydrogen-filled balloon there. 400,000 people filled the garden, embankments, roofs, and Place Louis XV. The entry fee was 3 sous. 9 years later, the mood was decidedly less friendly to Louis XVI when he and his family had to take refuge in the Salle du Manège, having escaped the mob of insurgents who invaded Tuileries on August 10, 1792, a revolutionary day that brought the monarchy's downfall. What was once Queen Catherine's Park had become the Republic's melting pot. See, there's a note, like 2 asterisks, but there's nothing. So they forgot whatever they wanted to put here. Wow. Okay. Palais de Justice. This ancient and ornate building that overlooks the Tour de l'Horloge, with its elaborate clock featuring figures of justice and law, was initially built in 1296 by Philip IV of France. In spite of his financial worries, it was here that he consolidated the dispensation of justice, although the judges soon came to be infamous for their corruption. During the Revolution, the Palais housed the much feared Revolutionary Tribunal, or Tribunal. Palais de Versailles. Yep, I did. Palais et Jardin de Luxembourg. In 1612, Marie de Medici, widow of Henri IV of France, purchased houses there from the Duke of Pinay-Luxembourg to build a sumptuous palace to the designs of French architect Salomon de Brosse. She wanted to call it the Medici Palace, but the Parisians, who hated her, kept using the name Luxembourg. Yes, she's one of those Medicis, but 100 years after Ezio knew them. Yes! Oh man, I love Ezio. He's my absolute favorite assassin. In 1750, the Luxembourg became the first museum in Paris, where visitors could view paintings from the royal collection. In 1793, the Luxembourg Palace was briefly converted into the Maison Nationale de Sûreté, or national prison. Danton was detained there before being sent to the guillotine, having done the same himself for so many of his enemies. Ouch, nice little dig there. Of course, you wouldn't expect an absurdo historian to be sympathetic to an assassin sympathizer, would you? Also, I think it's fair to say that Danton kind of deserves it. In 1801, Bonaparte offered the building to the French Senate. The function it still serves today. Transformations overseen by architect Alphonse de Guizot in 1836 modified the overall structure to the extent that Marie de Medici would probably not have recognized her former abode. The garden, however, is a favorite among Parisians. I would 1000% marry Ezio Auditore della Firenze if he was real. So, here's something I found. Le Patriote, 1789. Latude escapes again. Years ago, Jean-Henri Latude made quite a career of his exploits, escaping from the prison of Vincennes, then the Bastille, then Vincennes again. This time, however, he escaped from a crowd of well-wishers trying to shake his hand. The crowd pressed a bit closely for the escape artist, and he was compelled to rush away. Jacques is back. Following the hullabaloo we all rightfully raised on his behalf, the king has eased off and reappointed Necker to oversee the country's finances. Here for King Louis. Mademoiselle Lenormand, seer of the old city. The Ile de la Cité has its own Sibyl. Mademoiselle Lenormand is able to see one's future using her unique tarot cards designed by the woman herself. Treat yourself to a peek into the what is soon to be. The good Marquis de Lafayette has been confirmed as Commander-in-Chief of the new National Guard. With him in charge, order is no doubt to be swiftly restored. The troubles of the past week swept under the mask's silks. Republicanism, violence, surely Monsieur Desmoulins paints a rather bellicose picture. Can we not turn to reason and dialogue rather than to blows? Without the advances made in the Age of Enlightenment, brutality would seem rather out of place. Unfortunately not. Oh, letters from Elise. Holy shit. Alright, songs. Alright. Now, this took a lot of time, and thank you for your patience if you sat through that. I hope that was interesting for you as it was for me, because I really love the historic element of the Assassin's Creed series. And now I'm gonna do a new recording, and we're gonna continue the mission. Alright guys, new recording is set up. Let's do this. Are you police? Just in case. Alright. Please excuse me while I try my hardest to climb. Look at this. Thank you. Finally. It's so unpredictable and so unresponsive. I hate it. Alright. This is fucking gorgeous. Holy shit, this is gorgeous. So, in the flashback, there was like...
If you can pluck your head from your own arse, come find us.
You're yellow. Yeah, you want me to go there. Whoa! What the? There's people here! Oh, are these the saints that were mistaken as kings? Oh my god, people are so dumb. They've always been so dumb and will always be dumb. How can you mistake this for medieval kings? Like, they weren't angry. They were drunk. They were so drunk. Like, I can't think of another
What's the light supposed to illuminate?
Everything. Have you heard of the sun? Down. at this. Hold on. Look at the lights. This is gorgeous. Like, this whole place is just gorgeous. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's timed? Man, how was I to know? Fuck, I didn't know. Game. Whoa. Whoa, yeah, yeah, yeah. What? Blades.
Took you long enough, piss pot.
What
I
is this
was
place?
Chasing collectibles.
The sanctuary. A place we can train and prepare, away from the eyes of our enemies.
Didn't we just escape from a dungeon?
It's not a dungeon. It's a nerve center. From these tunnels we can get anywhere in the city, all without being seen. We have eyes everywhere.
Really? Seems visibility would be a problem. Wouldn't you prefer something with a view?
This place has served us well for 600 years, piss pot.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you standing in the dark waiting for me?
Not long. Guillaume spotted you from the bell tower.
Man, the soundtrack playing. Oh.
Well, it was quite the entrance.
Are you mocking me?
No, no. God's truth. Very theatrical.
Shut up. We're here.
The candidate will approach.
Like, hold on. It's nothing to do with the quality of voice acting, but just then, there was like a moment of silence that made things very, very awkward. It's just not well programmed, I don't think. But I don't fault the performers, the actors.
So, the son of Charles Dorion returns to us. Belek thought you wouldn't come, but changed your mind.
I'm tired of running from my failures. Monsieur de la Serre, my father. I want to make it right.
The death of Grandmaster de la Serre weighs on you. Why? Did you wield the blade yourself?
Does it matter? The blame still lies with me.
إن ذنوبه تكل كيلي. هل أنت متأكد منه؟
أنا كذلك. إنه قادر على مواجهة المحاكمة. سيكون جيدا.
Very well. Out of the dark you come into the light. From the light you will return to the dark. Are you prepared to travel the Eagle's path?
If that's a fancy way of asking, do I want your help? Yes.
Then drink.
Should just be one whole cutscene. Oh, the frame rate. Oh, Ubisoft. Oh, goodness. Like, I knew the game had a lot of problems when it came out, and expected was for them leaving the game as it is. Like, there's so much wrong with controls, performance, with visuals. It's, I mean, this is atrocious, to be honest. Like, you don't, like, with such a huge ass budget and, excuse me, Jesus, man, this is just kind of painful. The franchises are a lot better.
What's happening?
Hello?
Wait, this is my life. Being born, being a kid, meeting the girl, becoming an adult, and dying.
Can't I go with you, Father?
Courage, my boy. You wait just here. I will return when this hand reaches the top, and there is to be no mischief.
Father!
Where is that boy? I'm certain I told him 6 o'clock. We should be well away by now.
Father, it's me! I'm here!
Look at the skulls.
Father, look out! No!
I found that on the floor of my father's study. An opiate. Neither did my father. You seem to have caused quite a commotion.
What can I say? You were always a bad influence.
Oh, you were a worse one.
You must receive it today. It's very, very important. First time.
Haven't you done enough to repay my father's kindness?
He wasn't kind. Changed my mind. He was not kind.
If you can pluck your head from your own arse, come find us.
You'd make a fine fit.
Truly, I am blessed to have such a loyal connection, my friend.
What? That has to be a joke. How would anyone know? How would anyone know without dying first? It's me.
These are the words spoken by our ancestors, the words that lay at the heart of our creed.
Stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent.
Hide in plain sight.
Never compromise the Brotherhood.
Let these tenets be branded upon your mind. Follow them and be uplifted. Break them at your peril. Rise, assassin. Arno Dorion is dead. He has been culled from this world, his sins and failures turned to dust. Tonight he is reborn, a novice of the Assassin Brotherhood.
Welcome back. Now that you've experienced life as an assassin, are you willing to pick up the fight and join us? Deacon, load the file.
Coming up.
We lifted a media file from Abstergo last month, and the information it contains is astounding. But we won't share these things with just anyone. By pressing play, you'll be joining the assassins. If you want to fight the Templar menace, if you're willing to save civilization from Abstergo's clutches, press play, sit back, and ready yourself for the truth.
Let's do it!
Good choice. Welcome to the Assassins, Initiate.
About time!
In the 1950s, it was theorized that human DNA worked via the triple helix model. Some years later, the work of Crick and Watson demolished this theory in favor of the double helix. Today, we know the double helix to be indispensable indisputably the basis of all life. So why did the triple helix theory gain so much traction? Why did Rosalind Franklin's X-rays seem to confirm it? It turns out that their initial samples had been taken from small traces of precursor DNA, the rare genes of an ancient race embedded in our own. We now know that triple helix DNA is the foundation of the precursor genome. It is the genetic Rosetta Stone of our age. If we can crack it open, if we can sequence the full precursor genome, there is no limit to the knowledge we will gain. Using Animus technology, precursor history will be open to us for the first time ever. Ancient languages will be unlocked, and ancient technology will be ours for the taking. Imagine what will be possible if we master the technology that underpins the pieces of Eden. Such discoveries would surpass 100-fold the splitting of the atom. Last year, we located a rich sample of precursor DNA in a donor whose genes contained human and precursor DNA at an incredible 25-to-1 ratio. Our work will begin with this sample. Our goal is to unravel the triple helix, sequence the precursor genome, and change the world for the better, forever. Welcome to the Phoenix Project.
So, this is where we stand. Last year, Abstergo acquired the body of a man we call a Sage, one of a rare breed of humans with a surplus of ancient DNA. This sparked a search for more Sages, in the present and in the past. The more Abstergo finds, the closer they get to their final goal. We've blocked their recent attempts to find more, but Abstergo will not stop looking until they sequence a full precursor genome. So, why Arnaud Dorian? Why chase an assassin through the French Revolution? It turns out, at some point in his life, Arnaud came into contact with another Sage. We need you to find out when and where these meetings took place. If Arnaud was present for this Sage's death, it might lead Abstergo straight to his body. Naturally, we'd like to find it first. This is where you come in. It won't be simple. Genetic memory must be tackled in sequence to keep the data stable. But we're confident you're up to the task. And you won't be alone. Other initiates, assassins just like you, are doing their part to end this fight. If you need more training, more experience, you can call on them for help. Alright.
That's where the co-op comes into play.
Loading the next sequence.
The suit!
I've got something else for you. The more time you spend with Arnaud, the more data we'll have to increase your synchronization with him, and to activate his abilities. Here, have a look at this.
Yes! See? Why did the game tell me to level up when only now does the game allow me to actually do it? Makes no sense. And it's fucking Ubisoft. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Anyways. Ranged assassin, money pouch, stun grenade, communal sense, disguise apprentice locksmith. Oh, okay. Health. Hold on. Oh. Huh. Let's temporarily disguise yourself. Select a target. Wait, what? This makes no fucking sense. Yeah, I think I'm gonna get this. Wait, what? Oh. Alright, let's do this. I need this for sure. Oh, but I still have more things. Alright, let's do the assassination. Oh, he needs 4. I'm sorry. Pistols and muskets. I don't want this yet. Nah. Yes, I like that. Berserk Blades is awesome. I'm leaning more towards that. Alright, let's do the money. Bombs, money pouch, it's explosive cash.
One last thing. While you've been busy, I had Deacon do some poking around in Arno's memories. Seems he was a busy guy. See that symbol? That's a co-op mission. I play a lot of games multiplayer. I don't know about you, but I thought you'd like to mix it up a little. These are missions Arno ran with his assassin buddies, so they'll give you an idea of what our organization's about. Just walk into the glitch and you'll get all the details. I've marked them on your map.
Hell yeah. Active skill. I can't do this. Oh, but I can do this. 3 minutes. Oh, premium, right. Wait, what? Oh, equip. Okay. Colors. Do we have shoes? Yes. So, as I said before, yeah, shade. Oh my god. Oh my god, Ezio. Oh my god, I miss him so much. Whoa, this is badass. Todd McFarlane. Yo, this is badass. Oh, okay. Holy crap, that's hilarious. I love this one so much. Oh, this is full of nostalgia. Oh, there it is. Of course, the original assassin, you had to do stuff. Bellex, Master Assassin. So, Bellex gonna die? Is that what this means? Jesus, I'm just gonna wear this now. Oh, yeah. Long. Huh, this is pretty dope, honestly. Excuse me, what? Guillotine guns. Good lord. My goodness. My goodness. Business and pleasure. Training unlocked. And yeah, I guess then now I actually have access to more chests. Why am I getting so much money? Why so much money? DLC or what? Kill the criminals. I don't have the blades. I don't understand. this will be where I'll end the episode. I'm gonna grind so I can level up Arno, and I'll see you next mission. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.